yours?
Yes.
Yeah, she has it.
Yeah, you want me to?
Yeah, you want to bring everything?
That did not work.
Here's another one. So we discovered this morning, time is going to fly. So we're going to just chop you off as needed so that we have time to get around and talk about everybody's paper. We don't want anybody to get shortchanged. And is there somebody who would like to volunteer to have their paper looked at first?
I can go first.
Great. So, Case and Elaine, what do you guys want to kick off with questions for Kate?
Yeah, I had a question about like when you were talking about Richard and he tried to change his class. And I know you mentioned like it was unintentional that he changed his class, but I was thinking like, is it really passing if it's unintentional? Like, doesn't passing have to be something that's like a deliberate act, like how Claire was deliberately passing as like.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point, and I think that when it first kind of started, he was very young, and he was in elementary school, and I think that then it was kind of unintentional. But as he got older, and kind of recognized that he could do that, and he could be treated like others by just simply acting like them, I think that is when he really started passing, and that is not unintentional, but at the very beginning it was.
So was it passing like he was acting like his parents in middle class and they had a well-rounded education? Or was it passing like, I'm going to act smarter than I am? Because I think he was educated, so I don't think like that part was passing because he was acting smart.
Right, I agree. I think that he just didn't really, and I also think that it kind of is based off of his age. In third grade, you don't really understand fully the concept of class and how different you are from other people based on your class. So I think that he just wasn't necessarily saying, my family is different from yours, because he didn't understand that was necessary, which, go ahead.
And it was the second writing paragraph. On the second page, one of the very last sentences says, in reference to Richard Rodriguez, it says, this inadvertent passing shows how well some pass in order to get ahead in life. And it goes on. But then your first sentence of the next paragraph is Claire and Richard both made a decision, and that's sort of a contradiction.
Right,
and are you talking about sort of two different things there, or?
I think that I just wasn't very clear when I meant that when it kind of started and first started, it was inadvertent because he didn't really understand the differences between him and others. But then when he got older, he made the decision to continue to act that way and to continue to not even act as though he was somebody that he wasn't and came from a background that he wasn't, but to simply ignore that and not let it define him.
Yeah, that ties into, like you said, he pushed
Right.
his family away.
Yeah.
There was something about his visible identities of like being lower class.
Right.
And I was just like confused on
Right here.
visible
marker. On the second page, kind of like the middle.
Okay, yeah.
When she was like, Richard's visible marker of identity did not match his invisible markers of identity. And I was confused on, is his visible markers his skin?
Yeah, so I have the quote there on page 5 to kind of show that like his visible marker of identity was his skin color, which kind of led into a stereotype about his visible marker of identity.
So it also ties into race as well.
Right.
And you sort of tie that in with Claire as well.
So then would you say Richard's, like, his motive for passing was racial? Like I would say like to get rid of stereotypes?
Class.
That's what I was...
I think that overall it's class, but I do think that in this scenario, race kind of plays a part in that, because I think that in this scenario, the stereotype kind of connects race and class. So I think that he had to overcome both of those.
Certainly in the text it does talk about how he was a scholarship boy.
Right.
And a scholarship boy is, the one who is no longer easy to say, It talks a lot about the middle class and how everyone assumes he is because he is smart. So that does again tie to that stereotype of poor people or who are of lower class aren't as smart and like his parents couldn't read English.
On page 3, like towards the bottom, right before the last paragraph started, it says, but everyone has the same goal of being treated equal and to get ahead in life. And I know Claire's goal was to get ahead in life, but I don't know if it was to be treated equally, because I think she definitely did think she was better than everyone, like we saw in the text. But yeah. So I was like, can this be like a little clearer on what you're trying to say?
So I think that what I meant by treated equal is as an African American woman, she wanted to be treated. She didn't see why there were differences in privileges that whites had versus what African Americans had, and so she wanted to be equal in that sense. I agree. I think she did feel as if she was above a lot of people, but I think that she did still want just an even playing field between the races, and didn't really see why she didn't have as many opportunities because of her skin color and her race.
Can you think of evidence for that, Kayleigh? Are there places where Claire talks about racial? Does it seem that racial inequities concern her?
I don't know that she ever comes out and says it, but I think that it's kind of an underlying.
There definitely with a sort of underlying theme in the very early chapters.
Yes, that's what I was just.
It says it's in the second chapter when we first met the dream.
Yep, that's what was coming to my mind.
Oh, it's Irene says, "You see, Claire, I have everything I want except perhaps a little more money."
What page are you on?
Page 31. I'm sorry. The 8th paragraph. And then at the 8th paragraph, it says, and at that Claire laughed. Her spark of anger vanishes quickly. Of course, she declared, that's what everyone wants, just a little more money. And so I sort of think like that sort of equality is being African American. She can't make as much money as she would be if she passed anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's like a really great connection between Richard and Claire, that they were both doing these things intentionally or unintentionally to get more money in life and to get ahead, but Claire had to go the other ways because of like the time, and she was a woman and all.
So right back to Rodriguez. Do you sort of think that like his family also sort of pushed him away as well? Maybe inadvertently, because it does talk about how his family always sort of would like sort of not
Like
at least
his mom said,
intentionally.
why aren't things good enough for you and stuff like that?
No, so sort of like they would almost insult him without meaning to. So they would say,
What page are you on?
"Oh, I did not have that underlined."
Are you talking about like when his mom was talking about like why don't you read Spanish books and stuff like that?
Yeah, sort of. But there's another really good one where it talks about him, like his parents say, "Why are you always so like wrapped up in these books?" Or
Yeah, I think
like,
I know.
yeah, I can't
But I'm
find
not
the
sure where it is.
That's okay, Chase. Formulate your question about it.
So, do you think that really, like, with all that sort of his parents, like, inadvertently sort of insulted him? Because he did say they were trying to do it jokingly, but I sort of got the impression that Rodriguez took it a bit more harshly. Because he would have to, they would find him in the closet, and they'd be like, "What are you doing in the closet like this?" And reading a book. And so, do you think that his family also sort of pushed him away as well as he pushed them away?
I hadn't really thought about that. I kind of, now that you bring that up, think that it's kind of two people at fault. I think that while Richard definitely kind of made those steps to distance himself from his family, the family didn't necessarily push back and say, "No, we want you to be a part of our community and our heritage and our culture." So I think that that's a very good point.
And I think it was also like a cultural thing with them. Like they didn't. I remember somewhere in the passage he was talking about one day he came home from school and he was so proud that his teacher had told him he was leaving accent, and he was really, really young, probably like kindergarten or something. I think it was.
Between the
It
age,
was
like
young,
second
like
grade.
grade school
Yeah,
age.
grade school.
Yeah.
And his mom clearly was like shocked and almost like a little upset that he was so happy to be losing his culture. And I think what it wasn't that she was pushing her son away. She was just realizing, like being here and like being educated in America, he was losing like his Mexican culture, and I don't think that's what was bothering her the most. Was he was losing part of himself to become, I don't know, like something better, something else.
I think that his family kind of sacrificed that so that he could have this better life that they had dreamed for him and kind of almost expected from him.
And that's also another connection, I think, to Claire and Richard, is that they both had to lose parts of themselves in their community, and that, like you said in your paper too, that they had to lose part of themselves.
And I think you said at the end, like they sort of both wish they could go back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of like it relates because whereas Rodriguez sort of didn't want to lose his family, but wanted to come back. Claire lost her family, but she also lost that community, and that's what she wanted to go. Like Brian said, they always want to come back.
Yeah, and it's comforting to have people around you who like know you and look like you pretty much. And I think that's what they were both missing. But maybe like the more general theme, maybe it's like a reach, but like the more general theme is if you want to become greater or something, maybe you do have to sacrifice something. Like you can't, I don't know, he didn't feel like he could be rich and still be like genuinely have Mexican things around him.
Do you think that that was a reality? Like, do you think that that is a realistic situation?
I do think that's a realistic situation. Like, and I think you can see that on Chase. Do you have Irene and Sonia?
I have yeah.
Let's move to Chase.
Yeah, just a second. I wanted to transition to Chase's paper.
And it was I think both of Irene and Sonia did have to lose pieces of themselves, which was the reality.
Yeah, but the sort of way I took it is that whereas Irene sort of walked that thin line between the two, Sonia tried to hold on to her roots, and she mostly succeeded in that.
And in your paper, I was just a little bit confused on when you said Sonia, she didn't, the lack of, on the first page, in the second paragraph towards the bottom, you said Sonia's lack of knowledge made her feel alienated from her classmates.
I have that.
And I was just like, well, in that instance, where does passing come in?
Right.
Like,
I'm saying that she does not choose to pass.
So
So you
Sonia did not have to pass, but Irene did have to pass.
Sort of, no, Sonia chose not to pass.
Mm-hmm.
She did not pretend to be like this high society member surrounded by these people, whereas Irene did it out of her own convenience.
You said that I think this was your thesis, where you said they both made the decision to pass or not and had to deal with the consequences of that choice. So would you say, like, then what is, like, Sonia's consequence?
Her consequence was that alienation from all of her classmates, like that. She didn't really know what all the bridal registry. She didn't know anything about that, and she was wondering, what is this? Because it said in the text, in her culture, when somebody gets married, you hand them envelopes of cash instead of just buying them a gift. And so she didn't really understand what a bridal registry was. She got that impression from what they were saying, but she would never have known without physically asking.
You said she did not have to sacrifice her desire to be comfortable at school, but then this is on the second page in the first paragraph, but then there's a quote, there was a quote at the bottom where you said how out of place I felt at Princeton. So I said in that sense you did contradict yourself a little bit, because she did sacrifice
I was
being comfortable.
I see your point there, and I do understand. I definitely should have moved that to a different place. What I was trying to get across was the idea that instead of going to Harvard, where she went there and felt this like this intense discomfort because of all the wealth that was discovered there, she wanted to go someplace she felt more comfortable. And I should have moved that quote probably into the first paragraph. where it does talk about this alienation.
I'm trying. I have one question. In that second paragraph, kind of like the upper third, you have a quote, "You attend an elite prep school, no doubt there was valuable information swirling in the air." And then you say, "Sonia wanted a good education, but did not pick her school exclusively because it was the best school." And I kind of said, like, what does this show about Sonia? What is that?
That sort of like with that Harvard, a lot of lower class citizens would be thrilled to just get into any of these high elite schools, and she was thrilled, but she didn't base her decision on which one was the best for her academically. Like she was, if Harvard was the best academic school there, and she visited it, she didn't want to go to it because it was so uncomfortable for her, and she didn't want to be in this place where she knew she definitely couldn't survive with all this wealth going around and being a slave.
And like moving on to Irene, on the third page, you said in the first like full line,
Okay.
right? Like Irene's complex stance.
Yes.
Yeah, you said so. Irene's complex stance on passing complicates her understanding of race. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what did you think Irene's understanding of race was in the beginning of the story?
In the beginning, it was very sort of like set. Like she viewed Claire as black because she grew up with Claire. That's how Claire grew up, and that's what she thought. But then, as it went on, like I said in the paragraph, it sort of complicates when she begins to take into account her passing, and then like with the question of Claire's loyalty to the race. Like, yeah, technically, Irene Caesar was technically black because of the laws of the time, but at the same time, she goes, Claire isn't loyal, so she can't be part of it. Or why is she part of it?
Like, why is Claire part of the
community? Sort of, at the end, she begins to question why she thinks Claire is part of the African American community because Claire completely abandoned them. She abandoned the community to pass as white.
So you're saying that her definition of race was kind of that it's one or the other, and you don't.
Yeah, it's one or the other, and she by the end she sort of that vision disillusion is disillusion. Is that the correct term? I'll rephrase it. Is she loses that sort of concept of it's you're black or you're white, but she doesn't know what to replace it with.
And how do you think she sees herself then?
Yeah,
she does.
She passes.
I think she definitely sees herself as African American because of the whole. She doesn't want to fully transition, but she sort of does it for her own needs. But she identifies as African American. She lives in Harlem. She married a dark skinned man, has a dark skinned child, and doesn't have that desire to leave the African American community and have the socioeconomic advantages.
There's another quote in the same paragraph that I really like. I wanted to talk about. And she said it's funny about passing. We disapprove of it, but at the same time we condone it. And I just wanted to ask you guys, like, do you think this is how Irene like sees herself because she passes?
I do. I think it's almost she's saying. I think that this we is kind of her and herself, and she's saying, on the one hand, I feel like this is wrong, and I'm judging Claire, and I'm judging these people who have left their lives to become something they're not. But on the other hand, I'm doing it. I'm doing it when it's necessary, or not necessary, but when it's convenient for me. So it's kind of conflicting for her.
I think the whole we condone it and yet don't sort of says that there's a line that she draws in her own mind. Like, there's a line where you fully transition, and that's not acceptable because you're leaving behind that community. But then there's the other one where you do it just so you can go to those nice places, but you're still part of that community.
Do you think that this line? I agree that is something that she's kind of created for herself. Do you think that this is something that she kind of manipulates to fit herself and fit her needs?
Definitely, because she does talk. Like she's very critical of Claire. Like Claire passes fully can't do that. But when I do it for my own needs, it's
Well,
fine.
and she says
And
that
yeah, she
on.
does.
So this is actually a good moment to transition to Elaine's statement.
Well, on the idea of that, I think something I was trying to get across in my paper was I really think she's, I don't know, like she has the best of both worlds, yet it bothers her and it's affecting her because she knows her husband and her kids, they can't pass, but she can pass. So, like, this bothers Brian a lot and it, like, affects their relationship. And it, like, I don't know, passing, it's something that, like, bothers Brian a lot, clearly, and I think it's because he can't pass.
Yeah. So in your second paragraph, you brought in like the fourth line. You said although he had made a good life as a doctor, he was extremely dissatisfied, which stems from the immense amount of racial prejudice in America at the time. Do you think that connects to kind of Claire and Brian and Claire's relationship in any way? And like, how does that influence it?
Like, how do you mean the relationship?
Claire or Irene?
Irene, I don't know why I said that. Well, I mean, he is saying that you're saying that he's dissatisfied because of the racial prejudice. Do you think that passing, in general, and the way that his wife uses that, kind of contributes to that and kind of contributes to his?
Yeah, because I think Brian, like, he wishes his wife would stick to who she is and, like, realize that the idea of race in America is so horrible, like it bothers him so much that he wants to leave. And like she's the only thing holding him back in America, and she's the reason their kids got exposed to race, and yet at the same time she's like in denial about it because when she talks, and this is like a quote that I used, she said, "I do wish, Brian, that you wouldn't talk about lynching before Tedder Jr." And she's, in her mind, she thinks her kids aren't exposed to it, but she knows, like, her kids are dark, they look black, people are going to know they're black. So how can you, I don't know, like, how can you condone something that, in a sense, like, hurts your own kids?
I think that definitely within the text, there's a lot, like, there's a strict point, like a definite point where Brian says, I wanted to go to Brazil so that Ted Jr. wouldn't have to deal with all this.
Yeah.
But do you think that there's also sort of an underlying theme of he wants to go this well so Irene doesn't have to pass or can't pass?
Yes. Yeah. So, like, his wife, like, she'll finally, like, be a full part of the family and, like, not have to divert from, like, who she is or what, like, the family she's created.
Can you find a specific moment in the text where we learn about Brian's feelings about Irene passing? Is there a specific moment where we hear his thoughts?
I'm trying to think about when Brian is first introduced.
Or when he explicitly doesn't condone her passing?
I think on page 119, it might be when Brian's saying, like, at the expense of proper preparation for life. No, it was a little before. Once Brian growled, "I can't understand how anybody as intelligent as you, like to think that you are can show evidences of such stupidity."
Are we still on page 119?
Yeah, right here.
Is it
2/3 of the way down.
Yeah.
Okay, so now.
And I think that is like Brian, like, kind of like I don't know how to say this, like he's low-key talking about Irene, like how she's like, how can you create such a life for yourself and your sons, yet at the same time you're like dodging it and avoiding it in a way.
So
Like she's living in
a double life, kind of. She's. I think that he's kind of calling her out on being hypocritical and creating this environment at home and then living the opposite.
What are some possible counter arguments to that? So Elaine's arguing that the tension between Brian and Irene is caused by Irene's passing, or that's a contributing factor. What might someone say who disagreed with that?
It's not caused by that.
That sort of it's more caused by their disagreements on how to raise the children.
Okay, that could be one reason. Maybe one last question for Elaine, because we're almost out of time.
Oh, there was. Oh yes. You in the third page of the you identify Irene as technically part of the white community. And why do you believe that she's technically part of the white community?
Oh, I know. Technically, part of the community because she takes advantage of the things that they have. So like, mostly it's because I feel like Irene isn't loyal at all to her race. Because if she was, when at the Drayton, she would have just walked in there like, yeah, she didn't outright say she's white, but she never said, well,
She avoided the fact.
yeah, like she never says anything about I'm black. And then in the if we go back, she's like getting nervous and like annoyed. Yeah, on page 14.
Also another question for this to Rachel. I have another sort of thing to relate this to Rachel as well. When we just go ahead.
Okay. On page 17, she says, nevertheless, Irene felt in turn anger, scorn, and fear side over her. And she says it wasn't because she wasn't ashamed of being a Negro, but it was the idea of being rejected.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly, at this point, like she's downplaying what race she is to stay in this. Wait, I'm sorry. What was the original question?
That why do you consider Irene to be part of the white community?
Oh yeah, because she never says she's like black when white people are around, but she'll never say she's white when like I don't know, she's in both.
Even though she
If you're passing, you're in both. I feel.
and just sort of relate to that, like with this, because Irene passes, you sort of identify her as white. But in the case of Rachel, in the case of Rachel, she passes for African American, but you still identify her as white. So it's sort of like a contrast between the two. Like Irene passes, therefore, even though she identifies herself as African American, she sees her, you identify her as white, but whereas with Rachel Dole, she identifies herself as African American, yet you still see her as white.
Well, I feel like maybe
Is
I've
there
been letting myself get too caught up in that.
We're going to stop there, guys. We're out of time. We're over time. Could we have your questions? You gave yours to Ms. Furlonge.
Yeah, I wrote mine. I wrote mine on the paper.
All right, I'll take the paper then.
I have these paragraphs.
Oh, that's what I want, is the paragraphs, the summary there. You just give me those pages.
Good preparation.
Thank you, very good.
them on Google Docs if that is okay, so I can just
You-
share that.
Just
Yeah.
Give me
Yeah.
Ms. Furlonge. Yeah.
I'll share
I'll
it.
take. Cool.
Oh, I hate how it does this.
Thank you.
I have both the
You shared it with me too.
I'm sharing it right now. Okay, thank you.
Have a good couple hours. Enjoy the beach.
Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
job.
Oh, you will.
Bye.
That was really, really
Okay,
strong
bye.
preparation, guys.
Kayleigh had that was really excellent preparation on your part.
Way to carry a conversation. That was exactly what next week is.
All right, it's shared with you now.
Thanks,
So
Chase.
you have.
I'll go down and get